John, how can you always have the right TV for the right application without carrying hundreds of valves on your truck?
You can carry the hundreds of valves on a trailer behind your truck.
That's too funny. That would work, but how are you going to do that? Maybe there's an easier way.
You can use Sporland's interchangeable cartridge style Type Q and Type BQ TEVs. Type Q is a conventional design and Type BQ is a ballast for TEV.
Well, come on. I need easy. How easy is it?
Easy as 1, 2, 3.
And it serves thousands of unique applications. So what's the process? How do I put this together?
First, select the thermostatic element assembly. Then you select the body that you need. Then you select the right size cartridge for the application to get the proper capacity TEV for your application. Then I guess it should also be said you want to actually assemble those into a single valve.
That'd probably be a good idea. These easy to select and assemble valves mean you're always carrying for the right job. If the folks want to learn more, what do they do?
You can go to sporland.com and find more information on the Type Q and BQ thermostatic expansion valves.
I guess that's Jim and John for Sporland signing off.
We've all been there, in the middle of a job, everything going smoothly until boom, you're missing a part. United Refrigeration is your one-stop shop for all your refrigeration needs. Use your computer or smartphone to go to www.uri.com at any time of day or night to check stock on your favorite brands, such as Copeland, Sporland, Carlisle compressors, Danfoss, Emerson CPC boards and sensors, Carrel, Hussmann parts, and K2Therm. United Refrigeration, Inc. is home to these brands and many more. Looking for information on refrigerant conversions or refrigerant banking? Quick access links on the homepage can get you to the information you need. All approved accounts are able to see live to-the-minute inventory and pricing. Product not in stock at your local branch? No problem. Use the Nearby Stock feature to find a local branch that does have what you need. Are you looking for a branch address, phone number, or after-hours number? That's all available as well. Just click on the branch locator and search for your local branch. Have a model number and looking for a replacement part? www.uri.com/ARP has a vast list of quick pick replacement parts. Just search for the model number of the equipment you're working on and click the Replacement Parts tab. If you don't have an account, click the Register button and we'll have you online in no time. With more than 400 locations in North America, each United Refrigeration branch is fully stocked for immediate pickup. Our branch employees have in-depth technical knowledge, so we can help you get what you need when you need it. Visit your local store or www.uri.com/ARP today. United Refrigeration, Inc. has all your solutions down cold.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. You're the host, Brett Wetzel and Kevin Compass, coming live from Atlanta, Georgia at the AHR Expo. How you doing, Kev?
Not too bad. A little tired.
You enjoying yourself here in sunny, kind of sunny Georgia?
It's cold. But no, it's not too bad here. It's just a lot to take in. There's a lot. I think we only got through probably about half of it yesterday.
Dude, this place is just freaking just huge. There's so many halls. I was talking to a guy yesterday. He was walking around. He was like, yeah, I made it around B. I was like, you were here all day. He's like, yeah, I just kept going in a circle. There's just so many things to see here, man. There's so many manufacturers here. Nidex here. Of course, Parker Sporland's here. Westermeyer's here. Carrel's here, man. There's so many different manufacturers here, and so many good classes to take while you're here. There's the podcast pavilion you guys can scope out and check out. Man, it's a blast, man. So,
yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here. We both lost our rental car for almost an hour yesterday. I ended up in the other side of a parking deck somewhere, and apparently there's 3 red parking garages here, and yeah, he found his in about 40 minutes. It took me about an hour and 10 to find mine. This is massive. This is way bigger than I'm used to, in Chicago.
Well, that's the other thing. I kept asking someone, I was like, hey, can you tell me where the diamond garage is? And he's like, yeah, over this way. And he sent me in the total opposite direction. So I'm walking around like an asshole trying to figure out where the freak my car is. And I was like, before I left, I was like, I need to take a picture. I need to take a picture so I remember where the hell I'm at. And yeah, I don't know. I guess I was in a rush yesterday to get in, and I just totally spaced.
Yeah, I took a picture, but
Mhm.
it was of a red parking garage with the number 3 on it. And that was actually in the orange garage, level 3, red level.
Which is awesome because it could have been the ruby one. It could have been the red one.
Yeah, I mean, not cool. But today we're going to talk about CO2 charge management and loss reduction. So, kind of a weird topic, but the way we're going to talk about it is detecting leaks, leak detection, mitigating charge loss events, and dealing with leaks that are hard to find. So, first and foremost, guys, the majority of the time when you're losing charge in these CO2 racks, usually when they shut down, whether you have oil failures, you have power outages. I mean, that's when you're getting your refrigerant losses. Unfortunately, those are kind of hard to stop because, I mean, if you have a situation where you lose power and you don't have a backup generator or a backup unit, you're kind of screwed. So that's where having your reliefs tested, knowing that they're not popping early. We had a situation a couple weeks ago where we had a vessel relief popping at 575. So we had some issues where some valves were kind of lagging and the suction control was kind of lagging, and it was popping the vessel randomly. So it would get up to like 550, 565. I mean, you gotta remember these are mechanical reliefs. So it was popping like almost 100 pounds early.
So my question is to you. So like when I did industrial, like every so many years, you basically had to either get the valve recertified or just change it out and get it rebuilt and then have it sent back. As because you've been doing CO2 longer than I have. Have you seen that happen? Like, have you guys been actually doing that?
No, but here's my thing. If we have a bunch of power outages in a row and I know the relief pop for the vessel,
Mm-hmm.
it's getting replaced.
Gotcha.
Because what happens is after it pops so many times, it gets weak. So, especially the discharge reliefs. If a discharge relief went off a bunch of times, it's getting replaced.
No,
Usually they reseat, but the discharge reliefs get weaker faster than the reliefs on the flash tank. The flash tank reliefs are usually R410A reliefs. So they're usually readily available at a supply house. So they're a lot cheaper. So, I mean, those getting replaced, I mean, to me, is just cheap insurance.
yeah, agreed.
To keep it from popping early or getting weak. Now, those loss of charge events, I mean, you're pretty much not going to be able to avoid the power outages unless your customer installed a generator with a backup unit.
I was gonna say, how many of those units have you seen? Because like when we first started seeing, obviously Texas didn't get transcritical literally until this year, but before it was mostly all subcritical, cascade, liquid pump overfeed, and like I've seen when it first started coming out, I saw a lot of auxiliary condensing units. And essentially, if you don't know how those work, basically you have a high pressure switch on whatever part of the system that they're trying to just keep the pressure down on. So on a subcritical system, right? They keep it on the vessel. And they're trying to mitigate that pressure to make sure it doesn't pop off in relief. Do you see a lot of them up in Chicago where you at?
The only customer that I've ever seen put them in is Costco.
Really?
That is it. They are the only customer I've ever seen put a generator in and a backup unit.
Yeah, because sometimes I've seen them installed, but like they'll won't have them on a generator. They'll have them on the actual store power. I'm like, well, what's that gonna do?
I mean, it's still there for if the rack goes down, if you lose oil. I mean, that's still there, but yeah, if you lose power, you're pretty much screwed. Costco does it right though. They have 4 dedicated backup units on a dedicated generator that it's all ready to go. They get tested once a week.
Damn.
So they know if they're low on gas, if they're not cooling properly. But like that's the way to do it.
Yeah, so they're constantly making sure they don't lose that charge.
Yeah, I mean, so the other way, guys, is testing suction reliefs. Like on PMs, like I try to get the suction like 50 to 75 pounds over what it should be, just to make sure these reliefs aren't tripping. I've seen way too many suction reliefs that trip like 100 pounds under what they should be. So especially on the low temp, they get exercised more than they should because, I mean, of staging, the way the staging's set up in some of these controllers. Sometimes you hit the low temp reliefs. So, I mean, the low temp reliefs and the flash tank reliefs are generally the ones that are going to blow first.
What are so I know the flash tank one's typically about 650, right?
650-ish. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the low temps usually are about 400 to 450.
Yeah. I've seen like 435. I think I've seen that. Yeah. Okay.
So I generally try to get those up a little bit, like get them up around 300 pounds, make sure they're not going to trip.
Okay.
So test those that way. The medium temp, same way, get it up, 75 to 100 pounds over what it should be.
And what, you're just shutting off compressors or what?
Just shutting off compressors. Just
Are you pumping down the system and then just
No.
letting it rise natural, or are you
just shutting them down, and then I'll start them back up.
okay?
Just to do a quick check on them to make sure that they're not like popping randomly, because I've had a bunch of these. The other thing is we've had a bunch of these that get missed. We end up putting balloons on the reliefs.
It's a smart way to do it. Then if it actually pops, you know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, putting balloons on the reliefs is like key for CO2. I mean, especially with how many relief events you have on occasion, having that balloon there that's your definite proof that relief went off. I mean, they're not putting, I always forget what they're called.
Condoms.
No.
Oh, okay.
What are those, that all the racks have in between the relief and the relief manifold?
Oh, the
Indicator.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's not called that, but like it's a rupture disc.
Snap disc.
Yeah.
Snap disc. Rupture disc. Yeah.
So
That's it.
They aren't putting rupture discs
Or
on
the
these.
Sporlin booth. We probably fucking asked somebody, huh?
Yeah. So they are putting rupture discs on these.
Yeah.
So you're not going to know when they pop off unless you put a balloon there.
Yeah.
And test it that way. And if you have like a manifold style, like a Hill Phoenix rack where it's all manifolded together, we just get a bigger balloon and we put it on the outside of the manifolds.
We had a store in Dallas, and like whenever it would rain, it'd lose power. Whenever there would wind, it would lose power. It just had the shittiest power ever, and so like constantly there was literally right where usually all the files are for all the rack shit. It literally just a stack of balloons in there because it would just constantly you go there. Oh, it pump. Well, where'd the refrigerant go? Well, where the hell do you think it went? Power sucks.
Yeah. I mean, then now let's talk about the other side of it, the leak side. Now, CO2 leak detection it's increasingly become more difficult.
So
it's gotten better, but go ahead.
So let me just start off by saying, so CO2 leak detection is a little bit more difficult than typical regular leak detection. And the only reason why is because CO2 in the air is typically anywhere from 3 to 400 parts per million. If you're in a classroom or an office area, it'll be anywhere as high as 600 to 800. So unless you're in a rack room all by your lonesome, I mean, it's kind of it's hard to kind of mitigate. Like, well, did someone breathe in my general vicinity, or is it just do I have a fucking leak somewhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, in all of leak detectors, it doesn't matter who the brand is. They're zeroing out to what they think is a zero. It's not a true zero. So, I mean, that's where you become into this issue with you could have a building that is so saturated with CO2 that the leak detector doesn't work right.
Very true. Well, hold on. Let me ask you a question. Before you tell the story, did you start up the leak detector outside before you brought it inside?
Tried both.
Yeah. And it's still, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we tried both. And what happened was the building was so saturated, it was false. It was making the sensor freak out. It was sending false signals basically to the leak detector. And it wasn't going off.
I got you.
You would get a hit every once in a while. I mean, we had a nail through a suction line.
You said it was a set of trim nails?
Yeah.
So first off, how long were the trim nails, and where the hell was this pipe going through?
So it was in a wall, and it was after startup. It was like a month after startup. They put this faux Joanne Gaines shiplap wall up, and the guy doing the wall, he started at the bottom with like 2-inch nails. By the time he got to the top, they were like 3-inch trim nails. And
what the hell was he putting up?
Like it was just like
a Picasso
hardwood floor, like on the wall, like that Joanne Gaines ruin everybody's weekend thing.
Yeah.
So they were putting that up, and the guy nailed the suction line at 4 places, but only one went through.
And you said you guys didn't find it for a bit until what happened? You guys shut it down, right?
2 weeks. We had to shut it down to do something else, and it blew the nail up.
So there's your advanced refrigeration podcast hint. If you ever can't find a CO2 leak, just shut down the system for a little bit, maybe a nail or a screw.
Well, I leak checked this. I mean, it was an inner wall. Like I leak checked this line going in here like 4 different times myself, and like 3 other people did too, and none of us got a hit.
Gotcha.
Ended up being because the building was so saturated, and it just not so happened that the leak detector inside the building was bad.
So, I mean, besides bad practices of like leaks or starting up, like as far as doing the evacuation properly and all that other shit, what are you seeing out there that's giving a lot of people shit?
Transducers, this is a huge thing. Is so all these transducers come loose, okay, and everybody thinks you can't pull vacuums on them. Emerson, Microthermal, all those ones you can pull vacuums on. I'm not sure about Danfoss, but I always pressurize and pull vacuums on all of my transducers. Like I have them all installed. I've seen way too many guys go put them on after they pulled vacuums and did that, and then they have small leaks everywhere.
You hear that, Andre? I told you, pressure transducers. A guy called me up the other day. He's like, man, I've been pulling on this rack for almost 2 weeks. Now, I don't know how big the rack is. I mean, Andre works on industrial. For the most part, he works on ammonia, but occasionally they've been doing a lot of CO2 starting up here. And he called me up. He's like, yeah, I'm only at like 14,000 and they haven't found a leak yet. I'm like, start isolating shit. Cause I was like, are you isolated? Cause so when you pull a vacuum, like I had to think like I would pull separate vacuums, right? I'd pull a vacuum on the case side. I'd pull, no,
No,
you
I
pull
pull the
all
whole
at once.
system.
Okay.
I start isolating it once I realize it's not doing what I want it to do.
Yeah.
I start isolating it, but like I pull on the entire system.
But not for 2 weeks. Like after,
Oh God, no! After like 4 hours, if it's not getting down to where I want,
yeah.
like I'm pulling on the entire. Or I'm gonna start isolating it.
Yeah. And that's what I told him because he called me. He's like, do you know where it would leak on a lot of rack stuff? I'm like, Kevin says almost every single rack that he's ever gotten in has had a transducer. Also packing.
Yep.
Packing on valves is one of the worst ones. So I was doing a training thing over in Texas somewhere, and we were talking about the rack. We were going over this LMP rack, and as I'm going through it, I'm like, oh yeah, here's the liquid injection. As soon as I muttered the word liquid injection, all of a sudden there was a white cloud that started spouting out above, and they're like, did you do that on purpose? I'm like, yes, I'm a wizard. No, but like, so the packing was just super loose. So that's one of the things you should be checking as well when you're initially doing all your checks, making sure your valves are open, tighten those packings back up to make sure that you're not going to get anything through, to make sure that your vacuum goes a lot smoother.
So like my big thing is on the transducer installs, I want them Teflon taped and nylogged, and then I want the packings tightened up, and then I want the caps tightened up, because I don't want to have to go back through and open packed angle valves, or we're doing startup and there's a packed angle valve not open, and then we got something flooding back like really hard.
Also, make sure that you're using 2 wrenches on every single freaking thing that you're touching.
I'm not gonna lie, there's times I don't.
Okay, don't listen to what he just said. Always use two wrenches on every single valve that you're doing, because that one day that you don't, you're gonna break something off, and now that you're dealing with these higher pressures, you're gonna have a bad day. Hey guys, today's episode is sponsored by Westermeyer Industries Serviceable Oil Floats. Many oil separators contain an oil float to effectively meter separated oil back to the compressors. Westermeyer Industries has taken this concept and perfected it with their new line of serviceable oil floats. These floats feature an improved design with fewer components, allowing for greater manufacturer consistency and up to 20% increased oil flow versus their legacy models. These floats also feature an integrated magnet to shield the oil path from debris and have been field proven in supermarket applications. Westermeyer Industries offer replacement oil floats not only for their own separators, but also cross-compatible models for our competitor oil separators as well. You can find out more about the Westermeyer Industries serviceable oil floats by visiting westermeyerind.com/floats. Once again, that's westermeyerind.com/float. Let's get on with the episode.
Yeah, I mean, all the transducer packed angle valves and a lot of the rack ones. So when you start getting into like the high pressure stuff and the stainless, make sure you're using the right tape. So if you have like a stainless fitting where it's going into, you need to use stainless tape, and use everything on the high side. We no longer use Nylog. We use Permabond. Permabond's a pipe dope, basically. It's a high performance, like high pressure pipe dope. You can get it. United has it. Illinois Supply, like we are, has it. I mean, any like large piping supply place will have Permabond.
And the permanent bond, what's different? What makes it different than some of the other stuff?
It's just a higher. It's a higher quality pipe bond. Don't use a lot of it because it will crack a fitting.
Really?
If you shove a bunch of Permabond into threads and you crank down on it, it'll split a fitting.
See, that's what I was gonna ask. So like, I've always been like, as long as I've been doing refrigeration, the guy that taught me, it was just regular thread tape, and then I use Loctite 515 or 516, depending if it was high temp or medium temp. So that way, then you have the thickness of the actual tape, and then you have the lubricant, which then seals as you go in. But you said that Permabond should actually break it.
So if you put too much on there, like that Permabond stuff's so thick, it'll crack a fitting. But using stainless tape is very important. Because you can't use like the Blue Monster Teflon tape on stainless fittings. You have to use stainless rated tape, or Teflon, or else it's not going to seal right.
Really?
Yes. And usually, like Hill Phoenix will send that out with the racks. They'll send out like 2 or 3 bottles of Permabond and like stainless tape. But we only use it on the high side stuff. Here's the thing about Permabond: it's a lot like the blue goo. It'll get everywhere, and it's also very hard to get off. So use it sparingly and don't use it on everything.
So it's the equivalent of like the pain in the ass of RTV sealant, like for like smoke pipe and shit. You know what I mean?
I mean, just you don't need to glob it on all over like stuff like some guys do. Just a little bit on the threads and seal it in, and then on the high side stuff, make sure you guys get it nice and tight and everything's good. I mean, high side transistors usually are the ones we see leak the most. Usually it's not the case ones. It's usually the high side stuff on the rack. So just make sure that those are all good. Any flexible hoses, make sure that like they're not going to be anywhere where the vibrating. I mean, we're using VFDs for the compressors on there, so we're going to have bearing induced harmonics. So just make sure that nothing's going to rub against each other. Like I'll go buy rubber hose and cut it, and I'll sleeve any like pressure control hoses where they're going to rub against, and make sure that like they're not going to rub out.
Like brake line? You using brake line for it?
Not really brake line, like rubber hose. Like I'll go to like an auto store and like rubber hose and
Oh,
slice.
okay. All right.
Just so I could sleeve it and I'll zip tie it. So that way it's got a little more protection. So if it were to rub out, like it wouldn't completely blow the charge. And then the next thing is, so we've had a lot of cracked lines, and this has been an ongoing issue for the last 6-7 years. And you can't always find them on startup. Sometimes you got to get through all the conditions. So
hold on, when you say crack lines, are you talking vertical or horizontal, like where it's actually going through with the flow of the pipe? Or?
It doesn't matter. It's either or.
Okay.
So what ends up being is VFDs and compressors, especially recip compressors, they get a harmonic induced vibration. So certain compressors, usually it's like 46 to like 47 hertz. It's like usually one I delete out of all of them, because generally in my experience, like that hertz range on medium temp compressors on the TC side just vibrates like a old car. So what you want to do is like, you need to test this, and you need to go hertz by hertz. So go like 1 hertz at a time, up and down, till you find where this vibration starts and stops. And then in every VFD that I've seen so far, you could delete ranges of frequency out, so that way you don't vibrate that compressor.
Yeah. So typically like what Kevin's stating is basically when, there's a certain frequency where that compressor, those bearings just don't like. So a lot of times they'll just, like you said, most VFDs, you can basically go through the parameters and skip that shit out. So if it's flipping out at like 47 hertz, skip that shit and turn it up, because like, you have bits or compressors that say they can go all the way up to what? 87 hertz?
I refuse to bring them that high because they sound like they're going to come apart.
They say that you can though.
Yeah, but then when it fails, it's always liquid flood back. I mean, yeah, my whole thing with that is you got to go through and you got to make sure that those frequency ranges out. Now, this is where it screws you. Say we're doing a startup in the middle of wintertime and we're only hitting 900 pounds. you may have to simulate a transcritical day, 1,500 pounds, and run through it again to make sure you're not going to have this frequency freak out when it's got more load and more pressure on this compressor. So I mean, the load changes, and then the you could also have those frequencies pop up randomly.
Have you ever seen where you actually had like, because obviously whatever way that you're putting the three phase with a regular non-VFD motor, they're going to spin all in the same direction if they're all wired all the same. Have you ever seen where you had harmonic imbalance just because the VFD just so happened to be going in a different direction than the rest of the compressors? Because the only way you can actually really prove that is with a rotation indicator, right?
Yeah, so we have had that problem. We've had where compressors are running backwards. Somebody changed a contactor, flipped it around, and we got the VFD compressor running another way, and we get this nasty vibration. That even so for like DX compressors, when you have like 5 compressors on a rack and you got 3 going counterclockwise and 1 going the other way, I mean, you can get a vibration in there and crack discharge lines. I've seen that time and time again. Like guys they'll blame the compressor. They'll say the compressor's bad. Well, it's not really bad. It's just it has a vibration because at a certain pressure range, and it gets that harmonics in there from going the opposite direction, and it causes lines to crack.
Yeah, I've seen that happen a lot on suction lines too. Same thing with you were talking about leak mitigation, right? And one of the things also that could potentially be causing leaks is the wrong feet on compressors. Something as simple as that. You know what I mean? Like I've seen racks where they came with metal feet, and most of the 99% of the time you get a scroll. What does it come with? It comes with rubber feet on the bottom. You got 3 lines on there: discharge, vapor injection, and discharge. And then all of a sudden, you start cracking suction lines because that compressor's moving. And if you watch it, it doesn't really look like it's moving that far, but it's moving far enough that you'll see that whole thing shake, and gives that able to actually crack that line.
Yeah, I mean, so far with CO2, that hasn't been that much of a problem. We have had some instances where we've had to clamp lines. The low temp discharge line going into medium temp suction, we've had to support those because some of the manufacturers T-drilled those into the suction header, and we've had a lot of cracks there. So what we've done to mitigate that is we've taken strut and ran it down and put a strut foot on it and anchored it to the rack. So that way that we're a little more rigid there. So that way it doesn't break there. That's probably one of the number one break spots I see.
There's another thing that I did want to bring up because we went to a store and just so happened to be not right, but there was the relief trees that they typically have on the rack. One of the things I would recommend is making sure that the actual relief itself has a hydrosorb clamp actually clamping it. Because imagine, I mean, if you have a couple 100 pounds thrown out of there and you only have it supported by the bottom of the pipe, what's going to happen? That heavy ass relief is going to want to kick back up and potentially break the line. So the relief won't stop. Well, I mean, it'll stop, but it might be 20 feet away from the damn thing because it now broke the copper line that it was connected to.
So I'm a huge proponent, which I hate the way that some of these customer specs are. Like, I think the relief should all go to a manifold, and the manifold should go out of the rack and dump outside. I mean, there should be rubber hoses linking the reliefs to the manifold. A, they're easier to change. B, it's safer for the technician to change them. And C, it's not 27 feet up in the air where that could happen, where if it's not supported with strut like the way they wanted it, or say something happens to the strut, it's not flinging around and going to kill somebody.
Well, I've seen some of these other contractors where they'll actually put a hole. I mean, this must be spec, but like I've seen where you'll have like a little doghouse where you'll see all the relief lines come up and they are just in a row and just straight and supported, and it looks great. It's not going to go flying off if the damn thing goes to relief.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the way we do our reliefs, like we pipe them all into a manifold. Like the last couple stores we did a nice 2 1/8 manifold inside, and we piped all the reliefs into it, and then we dumped it outside.
All right, and that relief you're making that at HXP? No.
Just normal copper.
Oh, because okay. So all the reliefs are going into this one manifold. So at that point, it's at atmospheric, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know some stores are having us put in pre-release. There was one particular one where they basically have a liquid line solenoid that goes into an SDR, and basically when that thing, it's essentially called a pre-relief. So if the flash tank one is set for 650, the mechanical, they'll have this one set for like 590, 600 PSI. And basically, if it does relief, it starts opening up that SDR valve. Now, I will recommend do not allow that valve to travel all the way up to its full range. You know, I think the one that I saw had 6,386 steps. And if it has a step rate of 200 steps per second, that means it would take 32 seconds for that thing to fully open and then fully close. Well, here's the problem. By the time that you actually get to 2 steps, you probably now already released that pressure. So maybe restricting that valve not to be able to open up all the way 100%, maybe giving it a max of 15, 20, 30%. You just got to kind of play with it and see what happens. They also typically put a liquid line solenoid in there right before. So because you're coming off the flash tank, you might have a little bit of saturated vapor. You'll have a little bit of wet liquid or wet vapor. So what could potentially happen at the relief, that ice could potentially stick in there and cause the valve not to fully close. Hence why they like putting the solenoid right before that SCR valve.
I absolutely hate that setup because I've seen it twice now where it's dumped a charge because dry ice has gotten into the solenoid and the SDR.
Really? I see. I've never seen it where it actually got into the solenoid.
Like, I would rather not have that. I mean, I don't think it does what they say it's going to do. And here's the deal. Like, if they put a battery backup power supply on there and they were powering that and they were using that to like mitigate the charge, but that particular customer doesn't use a battery backup power supply and there's no battery backup to run that. So what's the point of even having it at that point?
No. Anything else you want to talk about mitigation of
No,
leaks?
it's starting to get loud in here, so I think we're going to call today.
All right, guys. Hey, listen, thanks for listening once again. Have fun. We'll talk to you guys later.